The planet Kalos was not a place for the faint of heart. Its vast plains stretched endlessly under a pale orange sky, dotted with jagged mountains and dense forests that seemed alive with strange sounds. The air carried the scent of alien flora, sweet yet sharp, and it clung to everything. For years, humans had tried to make this harsh world their home, carving out settlements in its unforgiving terrain. But they were not alone. The barbarians, tall, muscular warriors with skin like weathered leather and eyes as sharp as knives, had lived here long before humanity arrived. And now, peace between them hung by a thread. Daniel Carter stood at the edge of a clearing, his hands clasped tightly behind his back. He watched as Arik, the leader of the largest barbarian tribe, strode toward him. Arik moved with the confidence of someone who knew his strength and wasn't afraid to use it. His armor gleamed faintly in the dim light, etched with symbols Daniel still couldn't decipher despite months of trying. Behind Arik, a group of warriors waited silently, their faces unreadable, but their weapons ready. Elena Monroe stood beside Daniel, her arms crossed over her chest. She glanced at him briefly, then looked away. Her expression was calm, but he could see the tension in the way she held herself. They had worked together for nearly 2 years, negotiating truces and mediating disputes between humans and barbarians. It was hard work, exhausting even, but lately it felt like all their efforts were crumbling. "Do you think he'll listen?" Elena asked quietly, her voice barely audible over the rustling leaves. "I don't know," Daniel admitted, "but we have to try." Arik stopped a few feet away, his gaze sweeping over them both. He didn't bow or nod in greeting. Instead, he simply stared, as if sizing them up. Finally, he spoke, his deep voice rumbling like distant thunder. "You called me here, speak?" Daniel took a step forward, forcing himself to meet Arik's piercing gaze. "We need to talk about what happened last week. The attack near the eastern border, it can't happen again." "It wasn't us," Arik said flatly. "We honor our word." "We're not accusing you directly," Elena interjected quickly, stepping forward to stand beside Daniel. "But someone crossed the line. People are dead, Arik. Families are grieving. If we don't find out who did this, there will be no peace left to protect." For a moment, Arik said nothing. His eyes narrowed slightly and his jaw tightened. Then he turned to one of his warriors, barking something in his guttural language. The warrior nodded and handed him a small pouch. Arik tossed it to Daniel without ceremony. "What's this?" Daniel asked, catching it awkwardly. "Proof," Arik replied. "Not ours. We found tracks leading away from the site, human boots." Daniel exchanged a glance with Elena. Neither of them wanted to believe it, but they couldn't ignore the evidence either. Someone among their own people might be responsible for breaking the fragile ceasefire. Back at the human settlement, tensions were high. News of the attack had spread quickly, and emotions ran hot. Some settlers demanded retaliation while others pleaded for restraint. Laura Bennett sat in the corner of the mess hall, her head bowed low over a cup of tea that had gone cold. She hadn't spoken much since returning from patrol, where she'd been part of the team sent to investigate the scene of the massacre. Across the room, Mia Harper noticed Laura's silence and frowned. Mia was young, barely 20, but she had a knack for reading people. Something about Laura's demeanor seemed off, almost guilty. Curious, Mia got up and approached her. "You okay?" Mia asked softly, sliding into the seat across from Laura. Laura looked up, startled. For a split second, panic flickered in her eyes, but she quickly masked it with a weak smile. "Yeah, I'm fine, just tired." Mia hesitated, unsure whether to push further. Before she could decide, Ryan Cole walked in. Tall and broad-shouldered, Ryan was a former soldier who had stayed on Kalos after his tour ended. He commanded respect among the settlers, though he rarely sought it. Today, however, his presence brought an uneasy hush to the room. "Everyone," Ryan began, his voice steady but firm. "We need to talk." The settlers gathered around as Ryan explained what little they knew so far. The attack had targeted a small outpost on the outskirts of their territory, killing 5 people and destroying vital supplies. While initial reports suggested barbarian involvement, New evidence pointed elsewhere. Ryan didn't mention the tracks found at the scene, but the implication hung heavy in the air. This changes nothing, Ryan continued. We stick to the agreement. No retaliation unless we have proof. Understood? There were murmurs of dissent, but no one openly challenged him. Ryan's reputation as a fair and level-headed leader kept most people in check. Still, Mia couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was brewing beneath the surface. That night, Daniel and Elena sat in his quarters poring over maps and notes. The lamp cast a warm glow over the table, but neither of them looked relaxed. Daniel rubbed his temples, trying to stave off a headache. "We're running out of time," he muttered. "If we don't figure this out soon, it won't matter who started it. Both sides will want blood. And whose fault will that be?" Elena snapped, surprising even herself. She sighed, leaning back in her chair. "Sorry. I'm just frustrated. All this work, all these compromises, and for what? So someone can undo it in a single night?" Daniel nodded grimly. "I know, but giving up isn't an option. Not yet." As they talked, neither of them noticed the shadow moving outside the window. Laura crept along the wall, staying low and silent. She had heard enough. Whatever trust she once had in the system was gone now, replaced by anger and grief. Her brother's death during the last war haunted her every waking moment, and she couldn't bear the thought of more lives being lost because of empty promises. Inside her pocket, a small data chip pressed against her palm. It contained information she'd gathered over weeks, details about secret weapon caches hidden throughout the settlement, information she'd promised to deliver to those willing to fight back, to end the cycle of suffering once and for all. Morning came too quickly. The sun rose over Kalos, casting long shadows across the barren landscape. In the distance, the mountains loomed like silent sentinels, watching as humanity teetered on the brink of chaos. At the center of it all, Daniel and Elena prepared for another day of negotiations, unaware of the storm brewing within their own ranks. Peace was slipping through their fingers, and neither side seemed willing or able to hold on any longer. The next morning, the human settlement buzzed with activity. Settlers moved quickly, their faces tense and their voices hushed. News of the attack had spread like wildfire, and everyone was on edge. Some blamed the barbarians outright, while others whispered about betrayal within their own ranks. The fragile peace that Daniel and Elena had worked so hard to maintain now felt like a thin sheet of ice, ready to crack at any moment. In the command center, Ryan Cole stood in front of a large map pinned to the wall. His arms were crossed and his expression was grim. Around him, a small group of settlers listened intently as he outlined the steps they needed to take. "We need answers," Ryan said firmly, "and we need them fast, until we know who's responsible for this. No one leaves the settlement without permission. Understood?" The settlers nodded, though some looked uneasy. Ryan's orders made sense, but they also felt like a step backward. For months, they had been working toward coexistence with the barbarians, venturing beyond the settlement's walls, to trade and build relationships. Now fear was forcing them back into isolation. As the meeting broke up, Mia Harper lingered behind. She had been quiet during the discussion, her mind racing with questions. Something about Laura Bennett's behavior still bothered her. Why had Laura looked so guilty when asked about the attack? And why had she been sneaking around last night? Mia decided to follow her instincts. She waited until most of the settlers had left the room, then approached Ryan. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" she asked hesitantly. Ryan raised an eyebrow, but nodded. "Sure, what's on your mind?" "It's about Laura," Mia began. "I don't know if it means anything, but she seemed really upset yesterday, like more than just tired. And last night I saw her outside Daniel's quarters. She was acting weird, like she didn't want anyone to see her." Ryan frowned. "Are you saying you think Laura knows something?" "I don't know," Mia admitted, "but it's worth checking out, right?" Ryan studied her for a moment, then gave a slow nod. "Okay. Let me handle this, but keep your eyes open, all right? If you notice anything else, tell me immediately." Later that day, Ryan confronted Laura in the mess hall. She was sitting, alone, picking at a plate of food she clearly wasn't eating. When Ryan approached, she looked up, startled. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice sharp. "We need to talk," Ryan said, pulling out a chair and sitting down across from her. "Privately." Laura hesitated, then sighed and pushed her plate aside. "Fine. What is it?" Ryan leaned forward, his tone serious. "Mia told me she saw you near Daniel's quarters last night. Care to explain?" Laura's face flushed, and for a moment she looked like she might bolt. But then her expression hardened. "So what if I was there? It's not illegal to walk around camp, is it?" "Not unless you're hiding something," Ryan countered. "Look, Laura, I'm not accusing you of anything, but people are scared, and we can't afford secrets right now. If you know something, anything, you need to tell me." Laura stared at him, her jaw clenched. For a long moment she said nothing. Then, finally, she spoke. "You want the truth? Fine. I've been sharing information with a group of settlers who think the ceasefire is a waste of time. They believe we should be preparing for war, not pretending everything's fine." Ryan's eyes widened. "What kind of information?" "Nothing major," Laura insisted. "Just details about our patrols and supply routes. Things that could help us defend ourselves if it comes to that." Ryan leaned back, his mind racing. This was worse than he'd expected. Leaking information, even minor details, could jeopardize everything. "Do you realize how dangerous this is?" he demanded. "If the barbarians find out, it'll destroy whatever trust we've built." "They already broke the trust," Laura shot back, her voice rising. "Or have you forgotten what happened at the outpost? 5 people are dead, Ryan. My brother died in the last war, and for what? So we can sit here and pretend these savages are our friends?" Her words hung in the air, heavy and bitter. Ryan wanted to argue, to remind her that not all barbarians were responsible for the violence. But he knew it wouldn't matter. Laura's grief ran too deep, clouding her judgment. "Where's the group meeting?" Ryan asked after a pause. "I need to speak with them." Laura hesitated again, then shook her head. "No, I won't betray them. You can lock me up if you want, but I won't say another word." Ryan sighed, running a hand through his hair. He didn't want to punish Laura. He understood her pain, but her actions had put everyone in danger. "All right," he said reluctantly. "For now, you're confined to quarters. We'll figure this out later." Meanwhile, Daniel and Elena were preparing for another meeting with Auric. The barbarian leader had agreed to come to the settlement, though only after much persuasion. Both sides were wary, but the situation demanded action. When Auric arrived, flanked by his warriors, the tension in the air was palpable. He strode into the central square, his gaze sweeping over the gathered settlers. Daniel stepped forward to greet him, but before he could speak, Auric held up a hand. "Enough talk," Auric growled. "Show me proof of your innocence. Otherwise, my people will act." Elena stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "We're doing everything we can to investigate, but we've uncovered something troubling. One of our own has been leaking information to a faction that opposes the ceasefire. We're dealing with it now." Auric's eyes narrowed. "Why should I believe you? Your people have lied before." "We're not lying," Daniel insisted. "This is as much a betrayal to us as it is to you. Please, give us time to sort this out." Auric studied them for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Finally, he nodded. "One day, that's all you get. After that, we decide." As Auric and his warriors left the square, Daniel turned to Elena, his shoulders slumping. "That didn't go well." "No," Elena agreed. "But it could have been worse. At least he's giving us a chance." Back at the barracks, Ryan met with a small team of trusted settlers to discuss Laura's confession. Among them was Mia, who listened intently as Ryan explained the situation. "We need to find out who else is involved," Ryan said. "If Laura's telling the truth, and I think she is, then this group poses a real threat. They're playing with fire, and it's going to burn us all." "What about Laura?" one of the settlers asked. "Shouldn't she be punished?" "She will be," Ryan replied. But first, we need to focus on stopping this before it gets worse. Mia, I want you to keep an eye on her. See if she slips up or tries to contact anyone. Mia nodded, though she felt a pang of guilt. She hadn't meant to cause trouble for Laura, but she couldn't ignore what she'd seen. As the meeting ended, Ryan stayed behind, staring at the map on the wall. He thought about Laura's words, the anger and pain behind them. He understood why she felt the way she did, but that didn't make her actions any less dangerous. War was always easier than peace, but it came at a cost few were truly prepared to pay. Outside, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the settlement. Somewhere in the distance, the wind howled through the alien trees, carrying with it the weight of uncertainty. For now, the ceasefire still held, but for how much longer, no one could say. The night was cold, colder than usual for Kalos. The wind whipped through the settlement, rattling loose shutters and sending dust spiraling into the air. Inside the barracks, Ryan Cole sat at a table littered with maps and notes, his face illuminated by the flickering glow of a lantern. His team had spent hours piecing together what little they knew about the rogue faction Laura had mentioned. So far, it wasn't much. Mia Harper sat across from him, her hands wrapped around a steaming mug of tea. She hadn't spoken much since returning from keeping an eye on Laura, but her silence spoke volumes. Ryan could tell she was uneasy, maybe even guilty. He didn't blame her. Getting dragged into something like this wasn't easy, but they needed all the help they could get. "Did you notice anything?" Ryan asked finally, breaking the quiet. Mia hesitated before answering. She wrote something. I couldn't see what it was, but she tore a piece of paper out of her notebook and slipped it into her pocket. Then she went outside. Ryan frowned. "Where did she go?" "To the supply shed," Mia replied. But she didn't stay long. A few minutes later, she came back inside. Ryan nodded thoughtfully. "Okay, we'll check the shed first thing, in the morning. In the meantime, keep watching her. If she tries to leave again, let me know." Mia nodded, though she didn't look happy about it. She hated feeling like a spy, but she also knew how important this was. If Laura's actions led to another attack or worse, full-scale war, they'd all pay the price. Early the next morning, Ryan and 2 other settlers made their way to the supply shed. It was a small, weathered building tucked away at the edge of the settlement, rarely used except for storing spare tools and equipment. As they opened the door, the smell of rust and damp wood hit them immediately. Inside, the shelves were mostly empty, save for a few scattered items. But on one of the lower shelves, Ryan spotted something unusual. A folded piece of paper wedged between 2 crates. He picked it up carefully, unfolding it to reveal a short message written in hurried handwriting. "Meet tonight. Same place. Bring the data." Ryan's jaw tightened. This confirmed what they suspected. Laura wasn't acting alone. Whoever she was meeting, they wanted information. And based on the note, it sounded like she had already delivered something. "Let's take this to Daniel," Ryan said, tucking the paper into his pocket. "He needs to see this." When Ryan arrived at Daniel's quarters, he found both Daniel and Elena deep in discussion. They looked up as he entered, their expressions tense. "What is it?" Daniel asked. Ryan handed over the note. "We found this in the supply shed. Looks like Laura's been passing information to someone. Probably whoever leads this rogue group." Elena took the note, scanning it quickly. "Same place? Do we know where that is?" Ryan shook his head. "Not yet. But if we follow her tonight, we might find out." Daniel sighed, rubbing his temples. "This keeps getting worse. If this group is planning something big, we need to stop them before Arik finds out. Another betrayal could ruin everything." "We'll handle it," Ryan assured him. "Just focus on keeping the peace talks alive." That evening, Mia positioned herself near Laura's quarters, pretending to read a book while keeping an eye on the door. Her heart raced as she waited, torn between nerves and determination. Finally, just after sunset, Laura emerged, pulling her jacket tightly around her. She glanced around cautiously before heading toward the edge of the settlement. Mia followed at a safe distance, sticking to the shadows. Laura moved quickly, her steps purposeful. Eventually, she reached an old storage bunker abandoned years ago when the settlement expanded. Mia hung back, watching as Laura slipped inside. A few minutes later, Ryan and 2 others joined Mia. "Good work," Ryan whispered. "Now let's see who she's meeting." They crept closer to the bunker, careful not to make any noise. Through a crack in the door, they could see Laura standing in the dim light of a lantern. Across from her stood 3 settlers, their faces grim. One of them, a man named Greg, stepped forward. "You've got the data?" Greg asked, his voice low and urgent. Laura nodded, pulling a small chip from her pocket. "Everything you asked for. Patrol routes, supply locations, it's all here." Greg took the chip, examining it briefly before slipping it into his own pocket. "Good. Now listen carefully. Things are moving faster than expected. The barbarians won't wait forever, and neither can we. Be ready to act when the time comes." Laura hesitated. "Are you sure about this if we're caught?" "We won't be," Greg interrupted sharply. "As long as everyone does their part. Just stick to the plan, and we'll win this fight once and for all." Ryan signaled for his team to pull back. They retreated silently, waiting until they were far enough away before speaking. "They're planning something big," Ryan muttered. "And soon." "What do we do now?" Mia asked, her voice trembling slightly. "We report this to Daniel and Elena," Ryan replied. "But we can't move against them directly. Not yet. If Greg's group feels cornered, they might escalate things faster than we can handle." Back at the command center, Daniel and Elena listened in stunned silence as Ryan recounted what they had discovered. When he finished, Elena leaned back in her chair, her face pale. "This is bad," she said softly. "If word gets out that settlers are deliberately sabotaging the ceasefire, it'll confirm everything the barbarians already suspect." Daniel finished grimly. "We have to stop them, but we can't risk tipping them off either." "There's more," Ryan added. "While we were watching, Greg mentioned something about winning the fight. Whatever they're planning, it's going to happen soon." Elena stood abruptly, pacing the room. "Then we don't have a choice. We have to confront them, and fast." "No," Daniel said firmly. "If we act too quickly, we'll only make things worse. We need proof, something concrete that ties them to the attack on the outpost." Ryan nodded. "I agree. Let's focus on finding that chip Laura gave them. If we can get our hands on it, we'll have everything we need." Later that night, Mia lay awake in her bunk, staring at the ceiling. Her mind raced with everything she had seen and heard. She thought about Laura, about Greg and his followers, and about the fragile peace hanging by a thread. For the first time since arriving on Kalos, she felt truly scared, not just for herself but for everyone. The next morning, Daniel and Elena called an emergency meeting with the settlement leaders. While they didn't reveal everything they knew, they stressed the importance of unity and vigilance. Rumors of unrest within their ranks were spreading, and they needed everyone's cooperation to root out the problem. As the meeting broke up, Mia approached Daniel and Elena. "What happens if we can't stop them in time?" she asked quietly. Daniel placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We will. We have to." But even as he said it, doubt lingered in his eyes. The clock was ticking, and the stakes had never been higher. The days that followed were tense and restless. The settlement buzzed with nervous energy as rumors spread like wildfire. Some settlers whispered about traitors in their midst, while others speculated about an impending attack from the barbarians. No one knew exactly what was going on, but everyone could feel the weight of uncertainty pressing down on them. Daniel Carter and Elena Monroe worked tirelessly to keep things under control. They held meetings with the leaders of the settlement, urging calm and cooperation. But behind closed doors, they were scrambling to piece together a plan. The rogue faction led by Greg was a ticking time bomb, and if they couldn't defuse it soon, everything they had built would collapse. Ryan Cole and his team spent hours tracking Greg's movements, trying to find where he might be hiding the data chip Laura had given him. It wasn't easy. Greg was careful, always staying one step ahead. He rarely left his quarters unless absolutely necessary, and when he did, he made sure no one was following him. Mia Harper continued to play her part, keeping an eye on Laura without drawing suspicion. She felt guilty every time she saw Laura, knowing how much pain she was in. But Mia also knew that Laura's actions were putting everyone at risk. If Greg's group succeeded in their plans, it wouldn't just be the settlement that suffered. The entire planet could descend into chaos. One evening, Ryan gathered his team in a secluded corner of the barracks. The room was dimly lit, the only light coming from a single lantern hanging overhead. Everyone looked tired, their faces lined with worry. "We've got a lead," Ryan said, laying out a crude map on the table. "Greg met with someone earlier today, a trader who comes and goes from the settlement regularly. I think he's using the trader to smuggle information." "Who's the trader?" one of the settlers asked. "His name's Jonas," Ryan replied. "He deals mostly in supplies, but he's been seen talking to Greg more than once. My guess is he's delivering messages, or worse." "Do we know where Jonas is now?" Mia asked. Ryan nodded. "He's staying at a small outpost a few miles from here. If we move fast, we can catch him before he leaves again." "Let's do it," another settler said firmly. "We can't let them get away with this." Ryan hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "All right, but we need to be careful. If Greg finds out we're onto him, he'll go underground, and we'll lose our chance." The journey to the outpost took longer than expected. The terrain was rough, jagged rocks and loose soil making it difficult to travel quickly. By the time they reached the outpost, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the barren landscape. Jonas was easy to spot. He stood near a stack of crates, counting supplies and muttering to himself. Ryan signaled for his team to spread out, surrounding the area quietly. When they were in position, Ryan stepped forward. "Jonas," he called out, his voice firm but calm. Jonas froze, his eyes widening as he turned to face them. "What do you want?" he asked nervously. "We need to talk," Ryan said, closing the distance between them. "About Greg." Jonas shook his head, backing away. "I don't know anything about him. You've got the wrong guy." Ryan crossed his arms. "Don't lie to me, Jonas. We know you've been helping him. Now tell us what you've been carrying for him, or we take you back to the settlement and let the others decide what to do with you." For a moment, Jonas looked like he might bolt. Then, with a defeated sigh, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small device. "Here," he muttered, tossing it to Ryan. "Take it. Just leave me alone." Ryan caught the device and examined it closely. It was a portable drive similar to the one Laura had handed over to Greg. He slipped it into his pocket and turned back to Jonas. "You're done working with Greg, understand? If I hear you've helped him again, there won't be a second warning." Jonas nodded frantically. "I understand. I swear I won't say a word." As they left the outpost, Mia glanced at Ryan. "Do you think that's everything?" "No," Ryan admitted, "but it's a start." Back at the settlement, Daniel and Elena waited anxiously as Ryan uploaded the data from the portable drive. The screen flickered to life, displaying files and documents that sent a chill through the room. This is bad," Elena whispered, scrolling through the contents. "It's not just patrol routes and supply locations. They've mapped out weak points in our defenses. If the Barbarians get their hands on this, they'll have everything. They need to destroy us." Daniel finished grimly. Ryan clenched his fists. "We have to stop Greg before he shares this with anyone else. If Arik finds out we've been lying—" "He won't," Daniel interrupted sharply. "Not if we act quickly. Ryan, gather your team. We're moving tonight." That night, the settlement was eerily quiet. Most of the settlers were asleep, unaware of what was happening. Ryan and his team moved silently through the darkened streets, heading toward Greg's quarters. They had rehearsed the plan carefully, knowing that one mistake could cost them everything. When they reached Greg's door, Ryan gave the signal. Two settlers positioned themselves on either side while Ryan knocked firmly. After a moment, The door creaked open, and Greg appeared, bleary-eyed and unshaven. "What do you want?" he demanded, his voice slurred with sleep. "We need to talk," Ryan said, stepping inside before Greg could protest. The others followed, closing the door behind them. Greg's eyes darted around the room, panic creeping into his expression. "This isn't what it looks like," he stammered. "I'm not doing anything wrong." Ryan ignored him, searching the room quickly. In a locked drawer beneath Greg's bed, he found what they were looking for: the original data chip Laura had given him, along with several handwritten notes detailing their plans. "You're under arrest," Ryan said, holding up the evidence. "Anything you say will be used against you." Greg sank to his knees, his face pale. "Please," he begged. "I was just trying to protect us. The barbarians can't be trusted. They'll kill us all if we don't strike first." "It's not your decision to make," Daniel said coldly, stepping forward. "Your actions have endangered everyone here. There's no excuse for what you've done." As Greg was led away, Elena turned to Daniel. "What happens now?" "We confront Arik," Daniel replied. "We show him the truth and hope he believes us. If we don't, this whole thing falls apart." The next morning, Daniel and Elena met with Arik in the same clearing where they had spoken before. The barbarian leader stood tall and imposing, his warriors forming a protective circle around him. His expression was unreadable as Daniel approached, holding the confiscated data chips. "Arik," Daniel began, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. "We owe you an explanation." Arik raised an eyebrow. "Go on." "One of our own betrayed us," Daniel continued. "A group within the settlement has been plotting against the ceasefire, gathering intelligence to use against you. We stopped them before they could act, but I wanted you to know the truth." Elena stepped forward, handing the data chips to one of Arik's warriors. "This is proof. Everything they collected is here. We didn't know about this until recently, but we acted as soon as we did." Arik studied them for a long moment, his sharp gaze lingering on each of their faces. Finally, he spoke. "Why should I believe you? You humans lie easily." "We're telling the truth," Daniel insisted. "If we weren't, why would we come to you with this? Why would we risk exposing our own people?" Arik didn't respond immediately. Instead, he turned to Kale, his most trusted warrior, and spoke in his guttural language. Kale nodded and stepped forward, examining the data chips carefully. After a few minutes, Kale looked up and said something to Arik. Whatever it was, it seemed to satisfy him. He turned back to Daniel and Elena, his expression softening slightly. "Very well," Arik said. "I will accept your explanation for now. But know this, if such treachery happens again, there will be no mercy." Daniel nodded, relief washing over him. "Thank you, Arik, we won't let you down." As they walked back to the settlement, Elena exhaled deeply. "That went better than I expected." "Don't celebrate yet," Daniel warned. "This doesn't fix everything. There are still people among us who don't trust the barbarians and vice versa. We've bought ourselves some time, but the real work starts now." Elena nodded, her expression somber. "Then let's get to work." The days following the confrontation with Arik were a blur of activity. The settlement buzzed with a mix of relief and unease. Laura, Greg, and several others involved in the rogue faction were now under guard, their actions exposed for all to see. Some settlers felt vindicated, believing that rooting out traitors would strengthen their position. Others worried it was only a matter of time before tensions boiled over again. Daniel Carter and Elena Monroe worked tirelessly to rebuild trust, not just with the barbarians, but also within their own ranks. They held open meetings, inviting settlers to voice their concerns and frustrations. It wasn't easy. Many people still harbored deep resentment toward the barbarians, while others questioned whether peace was even possible. Despite the challenges, Daniel and Elena refused to give up. They knew that failure meant disaster for everyone. Ryan Cole spent most of his time overseeing security measures, ensuring no one else could exploit weaknesses in the settlement's defenses. He also kept a close eye on those who had been detained, particularly Greg. Ryan didn't trust him, not after everything he'd done. But as much as Ryan wanted answers, Greg remained tight-lipped, refusing to say anything beyond insisting he'd acted out of fear for the settlement's survival. Mia Harper, meanwhile, found herself struggling with conflicting emotions. She had played a key role in uncovering the rogue faction, but instead of feeling proud, she felt hollow. Every time she passed Laura's quarters, she thought about how angry and hurt Laura must feel. Mia knew Laura's intentions weren't entirely malicious. She had acted out of grief and desperation, but that didn't change the fact that her choices had put lives at risk. One evening, Daniel called a private meeting with Elena, Ryan, and Mia. They gathered in his quarters, the air thick with exhaustion and tension. The lantern flickered softly, casting long shadows across the walls. "We've made progress," Daniel began, leaning forward in his chair. "But it's not enough. We need to do more than just patch things up. We need to show both sides that working together is better than fighting." Elena nodded. "Orcs willing to cooperate for now, but we can't rely on that forever. If we want lasting peace, we have to address the root of the problem." "And what's that?" Ryan asked, crossing his arms. "Fear," Elena replied simply. "On both sides. Fear of losing control, fear of being betrayed, fear of dying. Until we deal with that, nothing will change." Daniel sighed, rubbing his temples. "So what do we do? How do we fix something so big?" "I think I might have an idea," Mia said quietly, surprising everyone. When all eyes turned to her, she hesitated before continuing. "What if we showed them? Not just talked about it, but actually proved that we can work together. Like doing something big, something neither side could do alone." "What did you have in mind?" Ryan asked, intrigued. Mia shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "I don't know exactly, but there's got to be something, a project, a mission, anything, that forces us to rely on each other. Maybe fixing one of the old research facilities or exploring someplace new. Something that benefits everyone." Elena smiled faintly. "It's risky, but it could work. If we choose the right task, it might bring people closer together." Daniel nodded slowly. "All right, let's think about it. In the meantime, we should start laying the groundwork. Ryan, talk to Cale. See if he's willing to help us organize something." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "You really think he'll go for it?" "It's worth a shot," Daniel replied. "If anyone can convince Arik, it's him." The next morning, Ryan met with Cale near the edge of the settlement. The barbarian warrior stood tall and imposing, his armor gleaming in the pale sunlight. Despite his intimidating presence, Cale had always struck Ryan as fair-minded, even reasonable by barbarian standards. "What do you want?" Cale asked bluntly, his voice low and gravelly. "I need your help," Ryan admitted. "We're trying to find a way to bring our people closer together, to prove that cooperation works better than conflict." Kyle studied him for a moment, his sharp eyes narrowing slightly. "Why should we care? Your kind has brought nothing but trouble." Ryan clenched his jaw but forced himself to stay calm. "Because this planet belongs to all of us now. If we keep fighting, none of us will survive. Isn't that reason enough?" Kyle didn't respond immediately. Instead, he glanced toward the horizon, where the jagged mountains loomed against the sky. Finally, he spoke. "There is a place, an old structure buried beneath the volcanic plateau. My people call it the Shadow Ruins. Long ago it was used for storing knowledge, though most of it is gone now. Perhaps restoring it could serve your purpose." Ryan frowned. "How dangerous is it?" "Very," Cale replied without hesitation. "The ground is unstable, and the ruins are filled with traps left behind by whoever built them. But if you truly wish to unite our peoples, it may be the test you seek." Back at the settlement, Daniel and Elena listened intently as Ryan explained what Cale had suggested. When he finished, Elena looked thoughtful. "It's risky," she said finally. "But it could work. Restoring the ruins would require both human and barbarian skills. And if we succeed, it could be a symbol of what we're capable of when we work together." Daniel nodded. "Then let's do it. But we'll need volunteers, people from both sides who are willing to take the risk." "That won't be easy," Ryan pointed out. Not many will want to walk into danger, especially with barbarians. Then we'll lead by example, Daniel replied firmly. If we're willing to go, others might follow. Over the next few days, Daniel and Elena worked hard to rally support for the mission. They spoke to settlers and barbarians alike, explaining the importance of the project and emphasizing the potential benefits. It wasn't an easy sell. Many were skeptical, unsure whether they could trust the other side. But slowly, a small group of volunteers began to form. Among the humans were Ryan, Mia, and a handful of settlers eager to prove themselves. From the barbarians came Kale and several warriors loyal to Arik. Though wary of each other, they shared a common goal: to prove that peace was possible. Before leaving, Daniel addressed the group. "This won't be easy," he said, his voice steady but firm. "The ruins are dangerous and we'll face challenges none of us can predict. But if we succeed, we'll show everyone on both sides that working together is stronger than fighting alone. Are you ready?" The group exchanged glances, then nodded. Whatever doubts they had, they pushed aside for now. This was their chance to make a difference. The journey to the Shadow Ruins took longer than expected. The terrain was harsh, the path littered with jagged rocks and treacherous slopes. Along the way, tensions flared occasionally, but Kale's presence helped keep the peace. His authority among the barbarians earned him respect, and his willingness to listen to human concerns earned him grudging admiration from the settlers. When they finally reached the ruins, the sight was breathtaking and ominous. The structure was half buried beneath layers of earth and ash, its crumbling walls covered in strange symbols. A faint hum emanated from within, almost imperceptible, but unsettling nonetheless. "This is it," Kyle said, gesturing toward the entrance. "Be careful. The traps are deadly." As they ventured inside, the air grew colder, damp and heavy with the scent of decay. Strange mechanisms lined the walls, their purposes unknown but clearly designed to deter intruders. Every step felt like a gamble, every shadow a potential threat. Despite the danger, the group worked well together. Humans used their tools and technology to disable traps, while the barbarians relied on their strength and instincts to navigate obstacles. Slowly but surely, they made progress, clearing debris and uncovering remnants of ancient knowledge. By the third day, they had uncovered something remarkable: a chamber filled with glowing crystals embedded in the walls. The light they emitted pulsed rhythmically as if alive. No one knew exactly what the crystals were for, but their beauty was undeniable. This could be important," Daniel murmured, running his fingers lightly over one of the crystals. "If we can figure out how they work, it might help us understand this place and maybe even use it to benefit everyone." Elena nodded, her expression awestruck. "Let's document everything, every detail matters." As the mission continued, something unexpected happened. Bonds began to form. Conversations that started as cautious exchanges turned into genuine discussions. Shared meals became moments of laughter rather than awkward silence. By the time they prepared to leave the ruins, the group no longer saw themselves as separate factions. They were a team. Their return to the settlement was met with surprise and hope. Word of their success spread quickly, inspiring others to consider the possibility of unity. For the first time in years, the future didn't seem quite so bleak. But even as celebrations began, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that their victory was fragile. The road ahead would still be difficult, and old wounds wouldn't heal overnight. Still, he allowed himself a small smile. They had taken the first step, and that was something worth celebrating. The success of the mission to the Shadow Ruins brought a wave of cautious optimism to the settlement. Settlers and barbarians alike marveled at the glowing crystals and the knowledge they represented. The ruins, once a symbol of danger and mystery, now stood as proof that cooperation could achieve what neither side could do alone. For the first time in years, there was a glimmer of hope. Daniel Carter and Elena Monroe worked tirelessly to capitalize on this newfound spirit of unity. They organized meetings between human leaders and barbarian chieftains, sharing updates on the ruins and discussing how the crystals might be used to benefit both peoples. While skepticism lingered, especially among older settlers and warriors who had lived through too many betrayals. The younger generation seemed eager to embrace change. Ryan Cole found himself spending more time with Kale, the barbarian warrior, who had become an unexpected ally during the mission. Though their worlds were vastly different, they shared a mutual respect forged in the heat of danger. Ryan admired Kale's loyalty and strength, while Kale respected Ryan's determination and fairness. Together, they began brainstorming ways to strengthen the fragile bond between humans and barbarians. Mia Harper, meanwhile, struggled to reconcile her role in exposing Laura and the rogue faction. She avoided Laura whenever possible, unable to face the pain she had caused. But one evening, as Mia sat alone near the edge of the settlement, lost in thought, Laura approached her. "Can we talk?" Laura asked hesitantly, her voice softer than Mia had ever heard it. Mia froze, unsure of what to say. Finally, she nodded. "Okay." Laura sat down beside her, staring out at the alien horizon. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Laura sighed. "I know you didn't have a choice," she said quietly. "You did what you thought was right. I'm not saying I agree with it, but I understand." Mia blinked, surprised by the words. "I'm sorry," she said finally. "I never wanted to hurt anyone." "I know," Laura replied. "And maybe you were right. Maybe trying to fight back the way we did would have made things worse. But losing my brother, it changed me. I couldn't just sit there and do nothing." Mia nodded slowly. "I get that. But peace isn't about doing nothing. It's about finding another way." Laura gave a faint smile, though sadness still lingered in her eyes. "Maybe you're right. Either way, thank you for listening." As Laura walked away, Mia felt a weight lift from her shoulders. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. In the weeks that followed, the settlement transformed. Teams of humans and barbarians worked together to study the crystals. From the shadow ruins experimenting with their properties, some settlers discovered that the crystals could purify water, while others found that they emitted a low-level energy that could power tools and equipment. The barbarians, in turn, shared their knowledge of the land, teaching the settlers how to navigate the harsh terrain and identify edible plants. Despite these advances, tensions occasionally flared. Not everyone was ready to trust the other side, and old prejudices died hard. Arguments broke out over resource allocation, leadership roles, and cultural differences. But instead of escalating into violence, these disputes were resolved through dialogue, painstaking, frustrating, but ultimately productive conversations. Daniel and Elena became symbols of this new era, their partnership representing the bridge between two worlds. They weren't perfect. Disagreements arose even between them, especially when decisions needed to be made quickly. But they always found a way to compromise, reminding everyone that unity required effort from all sides. One evening, Daniel called a meeting in the central square. Settlers and barbarians gathered under the pale orange sky, their faces illuminated by lanterns strung between posts. The mood was somber but hopeful, as if everyone sensed the importance of the moment. "Thank you for coming," Daniel began, his voice steady but warm. "We've accomplished a lot together recently, in the shadow ruins, in our daily lives, and in learning to trust each other. But none of us can ignore the challenges ahead. There will be setbacks. There will be moments when giving up feels easier than pushing forward. But I believe we can overcome them if we stay united." Elena stepped forward, her expression calm but resolute. "This planet is home to all of us now. We can't keep fighting over it. If we want to survive and thrive, we need to work together. That means sharing resources, respecting traditions, and protecting each other. It won't be easy, but it's worth it." Arik, standing near the front of the crowd, nodded slowly. "Your words carry truth," he said, his deep voice carrying across the square. "My people have suffered much, as have yours. But suffering does not have to define us. Let it teach us instead." Kale raised his hand, drawing attention. "There is one more thing," he said, turning to address both sides. "The shadow ruins hold secrets we have only begun to uncover. To explore them fully, we must commit to this alliance, not just today, but every day after. Will you stand? With us? The question hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Slowly, people began to nod. First a few settlers, then some barbarians, until the entire crowd joined in. It was a small gesture, but it carried immense weight. As the meeting ended, Ryan pulled Daniel aside. "Do you think this will last?" he asked, his tone unusually serious. "I don't know," Daniel admitted, "but I think we've given ourselves a chance. That's more than we had before." Ryan nodded, a rare smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Guess that's something to celebrate, huh?" Nearby, Mia watched as Laura helped distribute supplies to a group of barbarian children. Their laughter echoed through the square, a sound so simple yet profoundly powerful. For the first time in months, Mia allowed herself to feel hopeful. The next morning, Daniel and Elena stood together at the edge of the settlement, gazing out at the vast expanse of Kalos. The sun rose slowly, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson. Behind them, the sounds of activity filled the air, tools clinking, voices chatting, footsteps moving purposefully. "This is just the beginning," Elena said softly, breaking the silence. Daniel nodded. "Yeah, and it's not going to be easy, but as long as we keep trying, maybe that's enough." Elena smiled, leaning slightly against him. "For now, it has to be." In the distance, Kyle and Ryan stood atop a ridge, surveying the landscape below. Neither of them spoke, but their presence said everything. They had fought side by side, faced danger together, and emerged stronger for it. Whatever came next, they would face it together. As the wind swept across the plains, carrying with it the promise of a new day, Daniel thought about all they had lost and all they had gained. Peace was fragile, yes, but it was also resilient. It required patience, courage, and sacrifice. And though the road ahead would be long and uncertain, he believed they could walk it together.